JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So one of the wonderful companies that Amanda and I are helping on our reality show is out of California. I just got a text from her and it seems as though California is retreating all the way back to a near full shutdown. All indoor activities statewide as well as non-essential businesses are to be closed immediately. So this includes a number of businesses that were maybe just getting back to capacity. This is a spin studio that you work out in as well as other things, but as I was reading, barbershops and restaurants, and when you say non-essential, that covers a lot of businesses. And so the purpose of this video is that a lot of times when one state is moving in a direction like this, then other states start to consider and start doing the same thing. And so you want to do a couple of things right now. One, you want to ensure you've gotten the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So whether you're self-employed or a small business, this is probably a time to have a wake-up call that you probably need to go and get the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and in part not in a panic, so to speak, but there's only so much funds out there. The EIDL advance, we know, ended on Saturday. SBA did say it still has funds for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and right now it sounds as though they're doing up to $150,000. That includes the self-employed. Let me tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but the second thing I want you to do is list out right now what your rent and your utility bills are and any of your fixed costs related to your office, your shop, your restaurant, right? So rent and utilities, I just said, but you probably have some kind of insurance to cover that. You might have cable, you might have internet. What are some of the other expenses that you have? Lawn care, right? Group all those together and put down, in essence, here's costs that you have that no matter what, you're gonna still be expected to cover. The second is to list out what your payroll is. I think the best way to go about that is, instead of trying to figure it out for the month, it'd be a lot easier for business owners to figure out what is that for the payroll period. Now, some may be a little different from here to there, so go with an average, but you can just look at what was your last payroll run. But what's key here is you don't want to just look at what you paid the employees. You're going to need to include the payroll taxes that the employer, you, has to cover in addition to that. Typically when you take Social Security and Medicare and then the unemployment taxes, if you're doing a retirement match, kind of a rule of thumb would be whatever you're paying the employees, it would be another 10% to cover employer taxes and then also any kind of retirement benefit match. But also part of your payroll costs, I want you to look at what are you spending for health insurance for the employees. And then you probably have work comp insurance. You might have other benefits that you're covering. Maybe it's a car payment for the employees that have a car. Maybe it's a reimbursement of expenses or some kind of commute expense. But I want you to gather up all the expenses that you have that are related to your employees. And then I want you to list out, and even if some of this next two lists is already included in your first two things that I told you to gather up, I want you to just list them. But I want you to list what is coming due between now and the end of July, the next 2 weeks. What's coming due in the next 2 weeks? Just list it down. Then I want you to list out what's due in the first 2 weeks of August. So we're covering the next 4 weeks, but what's coming due? Now, when it comes to your payroll, you can just rely on that payroll cost, but you will have insurances with health insurance and other potentially work comp insurance. If that's due in the next 2 weeks, put it in that list. If it's due in the first 2 weeks, put it in that list, or both. Now, can't really do it wrong, but I want you to really also take a look at what's been going through the bank account in terms of automatic withdrawals, which is sometimes easy, not really to forget, but when you're making a list of what you're getting ready to pay in the next 2 weeks and then in the 2 weeks after that, you can just find that by logging in and looking at your banking activity, obviously just going back 30 days to ensure that you are picking up anything that's automatically coming out. And you're making 2 lists here of what's coming out. Now, what I think you should include, and be sure you do, what are any kind of loan payments that are coming out as well. Sometimes we don't necessarily think of it as an expense, but it's money going out the door. So you're going to have 4 categories that you're going to want to pull this together. And I think that'll be enough of what you need to get done today. I'll come out with a video later, for sure by tomorrow, on how to strategize with that. But I will just tell you this, in these 4 categories, things that are related to the rent and the utilities, doesn't matter if you're open or not, you want to get your hand around that so you know what that one number is in total. And then with your employment costs, you want to get your hands around that so that you know that amount in one total. And then I want you to go, well, here's what's due in the next 2 weeks and total it. Here's what's due in the first 2 weeks of August or 2 weeks after this and total it. You're going to have 4 totals, because when you're looking at now what's coming in the next 4 weeks, you're going to be able to easily pivot. Now, I understand that the list of what's the next 2 weeks and the 2 weeks after that is going to encompass things from your first 2 lists here, but it'll be important for you to know those 4 numbers. Then the last thing I want you to look at is, and especially in circumstances where it's an immediate shutdown, what do you know you're going to collect in the next 2 weeks? And then what would you collect the 2 weeks after that? Let me tell you this, if you're in the real estate business, be doing the same things. You may not have any payroll, you may not have rent, but you're going to have these similar expenses and bills. So I've worked with clients over the years, obviously not all at one time if we had circumstances where everybody's having issues of a shutdown, but I've worked with clients over the years, and this is really the first step. And mostly you want it to be as encompassing as it is, and the reason I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do with these numbers yet is I want you to, as emotionless, in an emotionless way, what am I trying to say? Without emotion, I'm wanting you to gather up these numbers. We're not going to talk about what we're going to do with these numbers until tomorrow, because I just want you to gather up the numbers. And it is okay. And the reason I want you to total them is so that you just see what the number is. You go, wow, okay, that's how much it is for payroll period. That's how much it is for rent and everything related to whether we're open or closed. Here's my bills in the next 2 weeks, and here's the bills for the 2 weeks after that. And then now you're aware. The 5th number is, what do you know that's going to come in? Any action I would tell you to take right now would be on that 5th number, that 5th line item, that 5th column. And that is, what do you need to do to make sure you're collecting on that? Who do you need to call? Who do you need to make sure that you're going to collect on those dollars? If you're closing now or in the next day, what are some things that you can do to potentially complete anything that you possibly need to then make a deliverable. Now, the last thing I'll say is that if you've ordered anything, you need to cancel it. If you've ordered inventory, you need to cancel it. Hopefully, that would be in a way that you're not going to have to pay for it. So you have to be smart about that. But if you've made orders on things, you need to contact them to either cancel it or put it on hold or figure out what you need to do. Then I'll have a follow-up video with you on what are we going to do with those numbers. And I'll have a worksheet that goes along with this that I'll put on my website that'll go along with my next video. But you're going to need to know these 5 things for them to fit into the worksheet. And you'll now be able to follow along, if you will, with what I'm going to be doing with Cindy, whose business is out in California. Her and her sister-in-law own a business, 5 locations. There's no secret to it. They're on our reality show. And part of what I'm doing is helping businesses at no cost, not because they can't pay or these are successful businesses just like this one that I'm talking to you about. So as I'm working with Cindy, I'll be doing these videos that you'll be able to do the same things. Now, if you're not in California, I don't even want to guess, but I know that some other states, Florida and Texas, have had a huge increase in cases where maybe they're going to be moving in that same direction. So Florida and Texas and states like that, you might have a little bit more time to prepare for this, but will it be this week or next week? No reason to create any panic. However, I just got a text here 10 minutes ago, and this is all effective immediately in California, which is just awful. So, all right, here's the thing though. When everybody around you and all the businesses are going through the same things that you are, okay, this should give you some relief in the sense that everybody else is going to be thinking that they should do what you're getting ready to do, but they may let the panic prevent them from doing it. They may let the emotion, which we should all have, but they may let the emotion prevent them from doing it. So work through this with me, because remember, numbers are numbers. They're black and white. You have full control of them. And like I've said before, and I've got it from CNBC The Prophet, which is if you know your numbers, you know your business. But we're going to have to be making some tough decisions. You're going to need to make them, of course, but you're going to need to be making some tough decisions. And the quicker you can make them, and I'm not saying in a negative way, but the quicker you can make them compared to anybody around you, whether they're vendors or customers or competitors, the quicker you can make decisions, the better likelihood it is that you will survive this quicker. You'll recover from it quicker, okay? Acting quickly, but with informed information will reduce the risk of misstepping and, falling off the track. By knowing where we're going, you'll better stay on track. So you're going to get through this. And the reason I know that is that everybody else is going through it. And what I mean is not everybody's going to close down in terms of permanent. Not every business is going to go out of business. Not possible. What relief will there be? Well, we know right now it's the EIDL. So like I said at the beginning, you go to sba.gov. You don't even really need a lot of information. I've got a playlist, the EIDL playlist, with videos that walk you through step by step, even for the self-employed, on getting the EIDL. But get into that portal. And I'll tell you this, if you don't have the EIDL, even before you come up with your 5 columns of numbers, get on and get the EIDL. Get on and apply for it right now. You're going to need to know your EIN. You're going to need to know the address that is on your last filed tax return, or if you do payroll, the last filed address with the IRS is the business address that you're going to need. I would have your business tax return in front of you. If you're self-employed, I'd have your Schedule C in front of you. What you want in front of you is the one that you last filed, because you're going to want your name to be exactly what's on that tax return, your address to be exactly what is on that tax return. Even if you think you know it, maybe who submitted the tax return doesn't have a period, didn't spell out drive. You're going to need to know and list the owners that are 20% or more. You're going to need their Social Security. You're going to need their address. Now, the thing to note here is that whatever address you're going to include, they verify identity. You want it to be their current home address. When you're talking about for the business, you want it to be the address that is on the business. So you can have a different mailing address. Now, it's going to ask kind of an unusual question, which is, what is the gross revenue of the 12 months preceding? And I will believe it's still going to say January 31st. So basically, when you have your tax return in front of you, or if you haven't filed your tax return, you have your financials in front of you, what was the gross income for your business? Then it's going to say, what is your COGS, cost of goods sold? So I've not been able to find anything specific on what the definition of that is, other than what I have read and gathered from other SBA commentary or news reports from those that are presenting information from the SBA, is that that is your expenses. So when you're listing your expenses of your business, be mindful of what expenses you're listing. So if you're looking at your P&L, if you're looking at your tax return, there's a line item that's called depreciation. There's a line item that might be called special depreciation. You wouldn't want to include that in your expenses. Now, it doesn't seem there's any real rhyme or reason that I can find yet how they determine how much you get of your EIDL. I'm just pointing out to you that that's a tax calculation. That's not an expense, if you will. And I would probably also say just be mindful that if you're looking at a P&L, that it's as accurate as possible from the standpoint of ensuring that you're just including properly the right expenses. So without going into any details on that, all I'm saying is put in what you know and put in what you know best, okay? If you don't have a set of financials, then get your bank statement and start figuring out where you stand on what your gross was and what your expenses were. The rest of the questions are gonna pretty well easily roll out. You're gonna wanna know how many employees you have. But I tell you this right now, you can pretty well do the application in about 5 minutes. Now, they're going to check your credit, but when they check your credit, it is simply to, I think, verify identity. Yes, it does seem to be relying on credit. However, I know those that have gotten the EIDL that couldn't get a loan anywhere else. So don't judge your own credit. And right now, if you're in a business that you were closed down before, you might count on the fact that you might be closed down again. I don't know that there's going to be PPP. If there is, there's definitely not as much as there was before. So prepare yourself, and I think EIDL is the way to prepare yourself. Now, tune in for this next video so that we can walk through what you need to be doing with these numbers. And if you're not in California, let's be thinking of those that are. And if you are in California, get on this ASAP. All right, hey, we're all in this together, as in we will all get through this together. Some are going to get better. Some are going to get through it better than others. And the ones that will get through it better than others are the ones that will be aware of their numbers. because then you will know what kind of decisions you need to make and how to go about them. All right? Well, listen, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, in the sense that as we are going through this, I'm going to be putting out additional information to help any way that I can. All right, hey, JJ the CPA here. Don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right, Cindy, let's rock. No worries. We're getting after this. I got ideas. Talk to you soon.